guys, and welcome back to y'all hearing this podcast version. I'm Kay. Thank you so much for coming back and joining us.
Hey, y'all. My name is Honeybee, or you can call me Bee. Don't mind the little wetness. It was raining. We had a little situation. Honeybee left his sunroof open.
Yes, it wasn't good. Thankfully, you got to it in time.
I did. I got right. Like, literally, it was just about to start downpouring again.
Good.
And I got it.
That's good.
We survived.
That's right. We made it through. Somehow. So we are, in case this is your first time joining us, we are a music appreciation podcast / YouTube video reaction channel. And what we do is every week we pick a theme. We each pick a song for the theme.
Yes, we
react
do.
to it on YouTube here.
Yes,
and then we do a podcast, which is where you're at now. So good job.
Yes, you found exactly where we are supposed to be.
You did.
Yes, and all the support you guys have been giving us has been absolutely amazing. We just hit 100 subscribers on YouTube, which is incredible. And, thank you for that, because that gives us the opportunity to reach more people. And now we have more, different functions that we could use to reach people. So now we can do lives and all that stuff. So thank you so much for the support. And then also, too, if you hit the description box down below. Somewhere over here. Somewhere there's a thing. It says description. Over here. Dig. Try to find it. But it's over there. And when you click on it, there's a link in there that brings you to other ways that you can support us. So we have our Patreon, which is amazing. We do a lot of different, just fun activities with our members. And we do a musical movie every month. We have polls and whatnot. So definitely check that out. And also liking, subscribing, sharing, all that great stuff is really helping us.
Absolutely.
And lastly, before I forget, because I can't forget about it, we have a whole merch store. It is absolutely amazing. Make sure you send us on pictures. Instagram or email us, or look in the description below. There's ways to contact us and send us pictures of you wearing your merch and stuff. And we'll definitely shout you out and show you off a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
I know that'll be super exciting.
Yeah,
I'd love to see some pictures.
Yeah. So, girl, why don't you go ahead and tell the people what we did this week, honey?
So this week, our theme was so amazing, and it was storytellers. So those songs that tell a story of some sort, or artists that are great at telling stories. I mean, there are a million out there. So I got to pick one that is a group near and dear to my heart. Yes. I grew up listening to my mother's favorite band, and I picked the Beatles, A Day in the Life, which is the end track to Sgt. Pepper's, which is amazing. That's part of the album cover.
Yes, I remember their outfits specifically.
Yeah, and there was a whole bunch of other people around too. But anyway,
because that album cover reminds me of marching band leaders.
Yeah.
I don't know the technical term for that.
Yeah,
but that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah,
and I live. So
this one has one of those. It's kind of a disjointed story. So it came from a couple different sources. So let's get into it a little bit.
Yeah, come on, girl. Let me take a flip. Let me quench my thirst. Go ahead, girl.
So it was written by John Lennon. He took, John Lennon wrote the opening and closing sections, while McCartney contributed to the bridge.
Okay.
For the climax, they actually hired an orchestra of 40 musicians, dressed them in tuxedos and funny hats, and told them they had 24 bars to ascend from the lowest note on their instruments to the highest note closest to E major. So that's what you heard those couple times, those crescendos.
That's what that was?
24 bars. They had to go from low to high.
How do you... Okay.
Yep. It's often been rated
I would love to know why they did that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think just as part of to kind of because it kind of told the story a bit, and then it went up into it, and then it dropped into the bridge, and then at the end it crescendos again. Yep. So it kind of breaks up the song a little bit.
It's like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
If you could actually see it on a graph, it'd be you know what I mean?
And I'm sorry, but that crescendo is the absolute best way to end an album ever. When it's just boom at the end.
Period. Yeah. I was like, Oh, so you just gonna go out like that?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
It's like them, like, mic drop, baby.
Oh, so you would just break, like, that's... Side note, I feel like that's how black people react that way, and I live because I do that. I be like, oh, so you just want to end like that?
Right.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you want my college degree? Do you want my credit card rating? Do you want my account number? Because you just smashed that. Like, what?
I know, I love it. I love it so much.
I live.
So it's often been rated as the Beatles' best, with reviewers calling it one of the most ambitious, influential, and groundbreaking works in pop music history, and perhaps one of the most important single tracks in the history of rock music. Now, you have to remember, we are talking about a time when we're still in kind of like, what's it? Hold on. Now I need to, was it the 60s?
I feel like it was the late 60s.
Yeah, 1967.
Yep.
So this is a time when we're still listening to kind of, it's the very beginnings of like kind of that whole kind of rock revolution, So this was...
Right before disco kicked in too.
Yeah, but this is like so groundbreaking for them to take all of these... to think of hiring an orchestra to do that,
right.
To think of taking all these disjointed stories and putting them together, to think of using like, I love the whole section where it's like, like there's, this whole album is so...
It's like the vocal placements, like the... I guess it's just literally like knowing what sounds to put where in that time period.
And it's one of the things too, where it's one of those first like weird albums. You know what I mean? Like
very like artsy.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it's one of the first concept albums.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like Would you call it a concept album?
There's not really a thread, because I feel like when it's a concept album, I think of things like The Wall, where there's like a story.
Okay.
You know?
Yes.
But I mean, it's so because since all the different members contributed songs to it, you have a little bit of everything,
I feel like you can almost...
Because you have some from Ringo, you have some from George, you have some from John and Paul, So.
I feel like this conversation and this album specifically is the reason why I feel like the Beatles are legends, because they literally this is literally a category on their own. Like it could be a concept album, but at the same time it's not. But at the same time it has like this flow to it. You know what I mean? I
remember hearing a story, and I believe it was in the Beatles anthology. Thing that they put out.
Yeah. Like box set or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it was on TV for a bit too. But anyway.
PBS Special Sauce.
I think it was on NBC or something. I remember I think I was in high school and I remember watching it. Because of course my mom was like, yes. And we taped it off the TV in our VCR.
Yes! I remember doing that.
Oh yeah.
I used to tape the VMAs.
So there is a story that Jimi Hendrix heard this album. He listened to it for a weekend. And then the next day he went and performed the entire album. And he took it and was like, he loved it so much that he...
That is probably the most incredible thing I think I've ever heard.
Because this
wild.
Was so new. This was so new and different. It's kind of like us hearing things like we were talking about my person from last week, Bjork, someone who's kind of taking established things and then kind of just tipping it on its head a little bit,
That's so dope.
Yeah, and that's what I love.
That's incredible. So, how do you listen to an album just for the weekend and then perform the whole thing?
Well, that's the thing is like, so I think we're so used to hearing the Beatles that like we can't even imagine hearing it like they did. You know what I mean? Like I just can imagine. So I'm guessing
he probably did like an
interpretation. My mom was 12 when this came out.
Wow.
So I can only imagine her like thinking about it and like. And listening to it,
It makes me think too, like, because now I'm sitting here thinking, like, did he do an actual, like, like replay of the whole album, or did he do his interpretation of it?
That I don't know.
Because I guess I'm asking that, and I find it so amazing and so mind blowing, is because this album itself is so intricate. Because
I'm sure it's like, an interpretation. Because of course he can't.
Because that's what I was like, how come? Like, what, you gonna get a whole orchestra player? Like,
right.
But that's so dope, and I think what I really like about them, like the Beatles themselves, is the simple fact that they are not afraid to take risks, and they truly just don't give a fuck what anybody thinks. Like, they are like strictly creating for the art, and it's really hard to have like people come out, especially in that generation, from that. So I think that it's this album, I think, is just so powerful.
Yeah. So to get into the story part of things, so Lennon took his lyrical inspiration from the death of Tara Brown, who is an heir to the Guinness family fortune, who died in a car crash at the young age of 21. Wow. And she was a good friend of the band members. And he also used random newspaper stories. For instance, the 4,000 holes line was from a real story in the Daily Mail about potholes in Blackburn.
Wow.
And so the official music video was uploaded to YouTube on October 28th, 2015. It originally appeared in their 95 anthology miniseries, but was taken from previously unreleased footage of the original recording sessions.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love stuff like that.
Yeah. So like I said, it's off of Sgt. Pepper's. It's the last song. Let's see. So it's produced by George Martin, who's legendary, Apple Records there. Written by Lennon McCartney, and it was recorded at Abbey Road. And let's see. So the piano was actually a bunch of people: George Martin, John Lennon, Mal Evans, Ringo Starr, and Paul McCartney. Acoustic guitar was John Lennon. The maracas was Ringo Starr. Congas was George Harrison. Percussion, Tristan Fry. Vocals, Paul and John. Bass, Paul. The orchestrators, George, Martin, John, and Paul. The conductor was George, John, and Paul. That's funny. And then it goes into all the different orchestra members too. But yeah, it's all together. So many. And just look at the list of all the songs that sample.
Oh my, yeah. I'm not surprised.
There's some covers, remixes.
Yup.
Yeah. So yeah, it's...
Oh my God.
I love this song. I love this album. I love the Beatles. Their harmonies, They
are really like the... How do I say this? I feel like they are the trailblazers when it comes to... I guess I'm trying to think of the words to say this because I don't want to say concepts, but like, I feel like that they're the trailblazers where like, if they have one set idea, they stick to it. Because you hear most artists are like, I'm going to go into the studio. We don't know, I know what I'm inspired by and I know what I would like to happen. But, this album, when we go into it, it's like, for the most part, we don't know what we're going to get. We're just going to go with it and just let it be organic. Like, that's what everybody usually says. But then you have people like the Beatles who go in there and they're like, this is what we're doing. We're going to have a full orchestra. And this is what we're trying to do with this. You know what I mean? And it's like, you go from this album and then compare it to the White Album. Like, it's just like completely different, but it's like the same idea. It's like you go into the White Album and it's like they're going like, this is what we're doing. This is how it's going to sound. We're sticking to it. And it's like, to have that mindset is so hard in itself. Yeah. But also to like, once you are able to do that and create, then you have these masterpieces that stand the test of time. And I think that they really are the greatest people at just being intentional with their art.
Yeah. I love that they all played off each other too. They all might have written their own songs and arranged different things, but also had each other to kind of, play things off of like that. So, because who knows who would have come up with that idea,
I mean, and it's just like, when it comes to them working as a group, like, again, too, with all of the, I guess, drama and BS that would happen behind the scenes, it's like they still pushed it aside to focus on the artistry, which again is something that most people don't do. You know what I mean? So there's just something so powerful when you have pieces of work like this and you listen to it, because it's like, it also reminds you that there really is like genuine art within music.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? Which, I mean, everybody knows music is a form of art.
Yeah.
But this is like literally like if you ever doubted, you know what I'm saying? Like the importance of music or the influence of music. It's like albums like these that will completely just change that thought process.
Absolutely.
I'm here for it. Yes, girl. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta tell us about what you picked for this.
Yes, girl.
For storytellers.
Mm-hmm. So you know I had to pick Baby Girl.
That's right.
Yeah. So for storytellers, I really wanted to touch base on, you know, a subject that, or songs that can, I guess, be interpreted multiple different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I had picked a song off of Aaliyah's last album, and it's called Never No More.
Mm-hmm.
And just to kind of give you guys a little background on the album, it says this is from Wikipedia, Aaliyah is the third and final studio album by American singer Aaliyah. It was released on July 7th, 2001 on Blackground Records and Virgin Records. It's also known as the Red Album.
Mm-hmm.
And it said Aaliyah started to work on the album in 1998. Wow. But rescheduled its recording around her developing film career.
Oh,
and
right. Yeah.
So she resumed recording in 2000 at Sing Sing Studios in Australia while she shot her movie Queen of the Damned. So during the day, she would shoot the movie, and then at night, she would go from working 16-hour days to going to finish recording.
Film sets are no joke. I worked on a lot of it.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
And, that is a day and a half. I can't even imagine.
Listen, to just go right back into like singing and like getting back into it, that's just like crazy. And then it says on the release, her self-titled album Aaliyah received highly positive reviews and charted at number 2 in the US. But it like the sales of the album kind of diminished afterwards. And when Blackground and Records and Virgin Records wanted a high charting single to increase the album sales, they suggested that Aaliyah shoot a video for the song Rock the Boat.
Mm-hmm.
And when she went to film the video Rock the Boat in the Bahamas, she ended up dying in a plane crash on August 25th. So the album came out, and then 7 weeks later, she ended up passing away.
That's so crazy.
But after her death, the sales of the album greatly increased, and it led it to being number 1 on the Billboard 200, and it ended up selling 13 million copies worldwide.
Wow.
And Aaliyah's music altogether was not on any streaming platform because of Blackground Records, which I believe we've actually talked about in a previous episode when we were referring to JoJo's career. But finally in 2021, all of the music was finally added to all streaming networks.
Yes, it made its way onto many playlists.
It surely did. Hello. So to kind of give you guys a little info on the song Never No More, this is actually from the website Genius, and it says on the 5th track on Aaliyah's self-titled album, she touches on a relationship that is seemingly coming to an end. In the beginning, she believes she can have a future with this man until he continues to grow more hostile and abusive, both physically and mentally. Although she sees his consistent change in behavior, but considering she's been blinded by love, Aaliyah holds onto the speck of hope that there was still good in him. However, she realizes that the way he is treating her is way out of line, which is a lyric from the song, and that she should have left him a long time ago, and when she first saw the previous red flags, and at that moment she declares never no more. So
is this about who I think it's about?
I think it's about
Mr. finally got charged with something.
Mr. who's trending on TikTok right now. We're not
even going to say his name.
We're not going to say his name.
You know who we're talking about. But
and the fact that this man is like trending on TikTok right now is disgusting.
No.
But I do think it was about him.
Yeah.
And The song was produced by a musician named Buddha, and the song was written by Buddha and Static Major. Let me tell you a little something about Static Major. Static Major was a part of this group that I'm trying to remember the name, and I'm like, you know what? Let me look it up real quick because he did. I remember the album was called Cheers to You, and one of my really good friends used to listen to it all the time. I can't remember the name. Oh, Player. Thank you. It was called Player. The group was called Player, and Static Major was a part of that group. Static Major ended up coming out of that group, and he ended up writing and producing a lot of music. He did a majority of anything that remotely was touched by Timbaland or Missy Elliott.
Oh, okay.
So he did a lot of Aaliyah's music. He did songs for Genuine. He did songs for Nas. He did songs for just anybody that was a part of that group. And his musicality is so legendary in the R&B, and you know, anybody that's in the R&B or R&B pop or R&B soul, like, he is incredible. And he ended up dying tragically, like, just unexpectedly. And it was just weird, you know what I mean? And it's just like another, you know, person lost. But he was really that, like, he was very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Is it valuable within her career? Or like, he was like
a key player.
Yeah, a key player. Yeah. Yes. Like, he was the Janet Jackson to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Do you know what I mean? Like, he was the, I don't know, Brandy to Rodney Jerkins. Like, those, like, Static and Aaliyah were like that. And so the song itself, it was just something that was very powerful. I feel like it's something that we all can relate to.
For sure.
I feel like, especially in this pandemic and in this day and age, there's a lot of people that are saying never no more. And, you know, it goes back to how we had said earlier that you can interpret songs in any way, shape, or form to your own situation. And so I feel like in this day and age, with everything that the world has gone through, I feel like this song can be related to so many things. Like, I could say Never No More in, you know, stance of Black Lives Matter. You know what I mean? Like, that could be a song that represents my feelings towards the mistreatment of people of color.
Absolutely.
That could be, Never No More could be done by the LGBTQIA plus community. It could be about anything. And it's just about overcoming that, you know, part of life that is just unfortunate, but it's something that we all experience in one way, you know, shape, or form.
Absolutely. Or, yeah, like I was saying in the reaction video, it can be a family member, it can be a friend, it can be, well, a friend.
Right, quote unquote.
It can be a coworker, it can be a boss, it can be.
Actually, well, let me take that quote unquote back, because it really could be a friend. And some people, I'm a firm believer in that idea that hurt people. Yeah. And sometimes you do hurt others not realizing.
Yeah, well,
to an extent.
Here's the thing.
Come on, girl, break it down, sister.
You can, to an extent, sure.
To an extent, yes.
But if someone says something to you and you don't try to change that behavior.
Yes, that's what, only if you're trying to change it.
Yeah.
Like, if you
may still slip up and do something, because I am no angel. I am sure I know I have things that I do. And
we all do.
It's amazing because they're the exact same things that my mother does.
Yes! Listen! As much as we don't want to admit it. Ooh, go ahead. That's a whole conversation. Ooh. Listen. Can we segue? Can we segue into segue?
Let's segue.
Because this is a perfect. I'm so glad you brought this up, because I want to ask you, since we're on the topic, and we're talking about, you know, basically taking responsibility for your own like actions, like just basically taking responsibility for you, right? Do you get mad, or when was the moment that you realized, A, holy shit, I am just like my parents, or B, like, in that moment, like, oh shit, like, I do the very thing that I call my mom or dad out for doing, or like my family members out for doing. And it's like that same idea of like, you know, you might not know that you are being somebody's never no more.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It doesn't matter like how small or how big. It's just like, it's a possibility. And so like in that moment, like what was that moment when you, cause you just said like, you know, I have my own shit and you know what I mean? I definitely am no angel. What was that moment like for you when you realized like, holy shit, I am just like them?
I think it coincided with the time that I realized that adults do not know what they are doing, have no clue, are figuring it out just as much as we were at 15 and thought the adults knew what the hell they were doing.
That's a word. Hold on.
I mean, seriously, I am now 42. You know, don't get me wrong, I'm much further ahead than I was in life when I was in my 20s or whatever, but I still am making it up as I go.
Right.
You know, and it's so funny because when you're younger, you're like, oh yeah, no, my parents have got it together. They know what they're doing. There's a plan.
Right.
There is like a, you know, rhyme and reason. And like, you know, obviously you can still rebel when you're a teenager or whatever, but like you kind of feel like they're steering the ship and you're going to be fine, you know?
Right.
And then when you get older and realize like, yeah, nope, they had no idea. They had no clue what was happening. None whatsoever. And then you kind of go, oh, wow.
Like, what's the daisies?
But yeah, I think it was kind of about that time. And I think it probably was in like my 20s, maybe even like my 30s that I was like, oh yeah, nope, that's a thing. This is a thing.
Yeah.
Like, and it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to not have like, I'm type A, I like a good plan and I like things to stick to that plan. But you know what? I can only control like myself and I can't control the universe. And yeah, I'm still working on that. But, but yeah, I think it was probably about then that I realized. And I think like the older you get, well, hopefully the more self-aware you get. Hopefully you can take that time and realize like what you need to learn, what you need to grow, what you need to do to make that happen. Because as you get older, I feel like just your relationships become more important with other people. And it's not necessarily like when you're in your 20s, you're friends with everybody and like you're hanging out with everybody and like it doesn't go that deep, you know? But when you get older, I feel like your circle may close a little bit, but those are the people that are like super important. And you realize too how what you do affects that circle, you know, and those little toxic things that can happen and, you know, and it's funny also, actually, you know what, there was another reason why I time when I found this out too. So, my mom, my grandmother and I, are all 25 years apart. So when I turned 25, my mom turned 50 and my grandmother turned 75.
Wow.
And we took a trip along with my Aunt Alice to London in 2005, which is the year. So my mom was telling me stories about how my grandma would always like clear her throat and then say something really snobby. And it was so funny because she would do it and we'd both just look at each other and be like, but then I was like, so my mom doesn't do that, but I could then pick up things that like my grandma did that my mom did. And then I was like, oh, I do. I do that too.
Listen, I just got into the biggest, most ridiculous, stupidest disagreement with my father. And it was so stupid.
Yep.
But in that moment, I walked away, and in that moment, my dad always, and it pisses me off. My dad's always like, you and your brothers are all the same. You guys are just alike. And I'm looking at him like, we like you. Like, what's up? Like, you know what I mean?
You're part of that group.
Right, you're a part of that. Like, but then I would always be like, well, they're more like you because I was always, you know, with my mom or whatever. But at the same time, I'm like, So we got into a stupid argument. It was just a disagreement. It was just something stupid. All right. And I come from a family where it's like, what I love is that, you know, and I've told you this, my family's very much like, my dad was very much like, if you want to argue, you and your brothers want to fight, you want to do whatever, you do whatever you need to do, get it out. But you don't leave until you guys give each other a hug or say, I love you. And then that's how it ends. You never end any arguments or fights. Like, that's just where we come from. So like, you know, I was walking away from this disagreement of something stupid. And I, in my mind, was like, he's being irrational, And then I thought about the way that I reacted. And in that moment, at 34 years old, I'm like, holy that is something my mom or dad would do. Both of them would do it. And I'm like, as much as I say I'm not like that, I was like, shit, I did that. And I was like, I gotta change it. And I ended up going and I apologized. I was like, listen, Dad, like, I'm sorry. It was stupid, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, everything was Gucci. But it was just the idea of like consistently thinking that you're not your parents because your parents had attributes or whatever that you just didn't want or you didn't like or whatever, and then like turn around and it is you. And it's kind of goes back to like being in certain situations where sometimes you accept things and you don't say never no more because it's something that's familiar to you. And so I guess the conversation of like, you know, finding out that you are just like your parents or doing things that are just like them that maybe at one point in your life made you feel frustrated or mad or whatever. And now you're doing the same thing. It's like you're a product of your environment, right? So
absolutely.
It kind of goes, you know, again, back to the song where it's like, you know, never no more. It makes me think like all the times that I've said never no more to someone, but also like, what if I was the other side doing it and not realizing it because it's familiar to me? Or what if I was accepting that because it's familiar to me? And it's just like, again, this song makes me think about that. So it's like the power of music. It makes you think about, you know, certain situations in your life that everybody can relate to. And it brings everybody together. Like, and some people can leave it up to interpretation, whether it's about an abusive situation or maybe you're the abuser. And maybe somebody is trying to say never no more to you. And you're not catching it because it's something that you're familiar with.
And it's so funny because as you get older too, going back to kind of the parent thing too, is that when you realize that they did not have it together, you also realize like their humanity in that moment. And you realize like the things that they did like at the time felt like to you was like their
for your good and for
well, like it was their crap that they were. You know what I mean? And they put it on you. And, you know, at the time, you just like didn't understand it. You were like, you thought it was all you and you were this awful, whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever the situation was. But then as you get older, you realize, okay, they were doing that. And that was because of that. And, you know, so you can kind of like think about it and like forgive them, which I think is really powerful. Because I love my mother very much. We get along so much better when we do not live together. I love my dad very much. The same thing. You know, it's nice to have that separation, you know, but that ability to be able to look back and say, okay, I can see why this happened. I can understand like where you were at, you know, especially I love my dad, but he was in the Navy. So he was away a lot. And my mom was alone with 3 kids. And she had 3 kids by the time she was 27, 28. And, you know, there are times when she was totally alone and she
was stressed and all that.
And she got her bachelor's, she got her master, you know, and did all these things on her own, you know, so I also look to that because we also get the good stuff from our parents.
We do. And that's the thing, like, we definitely get the good stuff from our parents. We get all of it. You know what I mean? It really does. We are a product of our parents. I think that as we get older, we make our own. You know what I mean?
Interpretation of that.
And, but it's just always funny to look back and be like, shit, what was the moment where I was like, oh my God, I am just like them. Like, you know, or some people will be in the middle of a work meeting and respond a certain way and be like, holy like there's times my dad is very like, he's very like stern. He was military for almost 30 years, like very stern. And there are times where I would respond to people and I don't realize that I'm responding like, because sometimes I'll go out with my father and I'll be like, my dad will say something to the person that's working and I'm looking at him like, oh my God.
My dad too. Oh,
like, I'm like, what?
The way he talks to like service people, I'm like, you have never worked in
right. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, wait, what? And but then I catch
snapping fingers.
But then wow. But then I catch myself doing that and I'm like, ooh, I just really caught an attitude with that person for no reason. And that is not like me. And I'm like, why did I do that? And I'm like, oh.
I'm a fighter. I'm a fighter to the death on certain
things you will not let it go.
Like little things. And then I'm like, oh, why?
Right. It's like, not
this
that
is
serious.
so silly.
Right. And that's literally what happens. And that's just.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, familiar traits. So, again, bringing it all the way back, that's what music will do.
That's right.
Rest in peace, Aaliyah. Shout out to Aaliyah for,
absolutely.
creating that conversation in general, whether it's, being in an abusive situation or just in a toxic situation or not realizing you might be the toxic one. And it's not, whether it's intentional or not intentional. It's just the song itself just makes you open your mind and really look at how you interact with people and how people interact with you. Let us know what you guys think. Let us know
what you pick for this theme.
Yeah, like what is your storyteller's theme, and what would be a great song that you would want to share with everybody. And just thank you for your continued support and love.
Thank you so much.
And until next time, girl.
Yes.
I'm just saying, wiggity, 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 wiggity. Come on.
I don't think I've ever done that seriously before, but thank you.
Yes, do you remember that? Do you remember Rocket Power? Like, wiggity, wiggity. That's what me and my friends used to always do. And on that note, love you. Bye.
Bye.